morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, distinguished guests and participants. I have the honor to open the second edition of the monthly Cybersecurity Conference events organized in partnership by CMU, Constanta Maritime University, through the Center for Excellence in Maritime Cybersecurity, Cybureau, the Institute for Cyber Policy Studies, and I2DS2 Integrated Intelligence, Defense and Security Solutions. The special occasion is given by the perspective of an overview of cybersecurity as a whole on the year ending. In the opening, I would like to thank you, our guests and keynote speakers for their presence, respectively Dan Kumpan, the Director, National Cybersecurity Directorate, and Nir Ayalon Saidon, Chief Executive Officer. Today's conference will be moderated by Dr. John McCarthy, an old friend and partner of our university in the cyber training area. He is CEO at Oxford Systems. I'm fully convinced that their participation will bring a complete overview on the state of global cybersecurity. Perhaps nothing is more global than a maritime perspective of cybersecurity's narrow focus, because safe transportation and communication are the cornerstones of our modern society. In fact, the combination of the maritime industry and cybersecurity is so important that the transportation logistic problems we all felt during the pandemic and today, and the risk of their potentiation due to the lack of cybersecurity, can lead to unpredictable disasters. To prevent this, we need events and trigger actions such as today's conference, followed by substantial collaboration at the academic, institutional, operational, and economic levels. Our role as cybersecurity educators has led us to introduce a virtual gallery of cybersecurity technologies in sci-ed.tech web portal format. We want to provide comprehensive academic information to all researchers and developers, those interested in scientific collaboration in the field of cybersecurity. The Sci-Edu-Tech logo in my background is trying to remind us of that. We have so many important things to say that in the online excerpt that will be available after this conference, we will include the statement of the President of the University Senate as a guarantee of our determination for education and research in cybersecurity.
We had the opportunity at the end of 2021 to do a retrospective of cybersecurity in the maritime field. What qualified us for this? First of all, the proactive managerial and scientific approach to security challenges. Moreover, the entrepreneurial vision of the maritime field, a vision that we teach to our students, transforms us into a hub of knowledge, able to bring together the academic field, successful international companies, and national public authorities. At the Maritime University present in all maritime educational and professional organizations globally, and I would quote here EAMU and BIMCO, we can say that from the point of view of understanding the managerial needs of cybersecurity, CyView was probably the first maritime university which in 2017 launched a series of global cybersecurity initiatives, such as the first Center of Excellence in Maritime Cybersecurity, the first Maritime Security Simulator, and the first regional conference on maritime cybersecurity in the Black Sea. Launched recently, the initiative of Sci-Edu.Tech technology galleries offer students, researchers, and cybersecurity specialists the opportunity to build bridges of cooperation in a large and complex professional field. As an academic institution, we have the vocation to offer scientific and technological support and abilities to all the format of cooperation within the international partnership. This year, as a retrospective, we had the possibility to bring together the National Directorate of Cybersecurity of Romania and one of the most innovative companies in the field of maritime cybersecurity, the Israeli company Cybersecurity. I am fully convinced that the future of maritime navigation will be safer and more predictable from now on. Of course, based on our experience, based on our partners' experience, and based on our future efforts to make a better life. I hope that in the new year, all together we have better results and will succeed to have better and better and better life.
Right now, I want to transfer the virtual stage to Dr. Tal Pavel, Director and founder of Cybureau, co-organizer of the event, doing together this series of monthly events. Please, Tal, you have the virtual stage right now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gabriel Reichel, Professor Gabriel Reichel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers, participants, and attendees. Welcome to the second event of our monthly series, Cybersecurity in the Maritime Sector. The cyberspace shapes our daily life as individuals, organizations, societies, and states, and is changing constantly, posing challenges. In addition, the COVID-19 era posed constant challenges and threats, including the cyberspace. At the end of this challenging key, we would like to take this opportunity to have a summary of the year 2021 on cybersecurity in the maritime sector. I would like to thank to our moderator, Dr. John McCarthy, CEO of Oxford System, the speaker, Mr. Dan Cipan, the Director of the National Cybersecurity Directorate of Romania, and Mr. Nir Ayalon, CEO of Cybersecurity from Israel. And of course, my partner of organizing this event, Professor Gabriel Reichel, Vice Director of Innovation and Research at the Constanta Maritime Security. I welcome and greet you at the beginning of our event, Cybersecurity Year-End Review in Maritime Sector. Thank you for joining us. May this event be valuable and fruitful to you. I wish all the good wishes, and especially those days, all the good health, and of course, happy holiday season. Thank you.
Dear John, please, you can take the moderation right now and make the first step in starting the content of our conference. Thank you.
Certainly, and good morning, and thank you. Okay, what an esteemed panel, and what an honor and a privilege it is once again to collaborate with the university and the esteemed people that we have here. It's my honor and privilege to be working with Gabrielle over the past few years, and we've established a positive working relationship that will not only strengthen our bonds together in what we're doing, but I believe adds to the overall credibility of cybersecurity and its impact in protecting our critical national infrastructure and in relation to our maritime environment. Gabriel and I have been working together to look at the implementation of some maritime cybersecurity certification programs that have been developed in the UK. And you will be hearing about these as we move forward into 2022. I believe now, Gabrielle, you wish me to introduce Dan? Would that be correct as our first speaker?
Yes, Mr. Cipan is the first speaker indeed. Okay,
so it gives me great pleasure. Let me just see if I can do this. I'm doing this to introduce Dan Kimpian. I'm sorry if I presented your name incorrectly. He's a director of the National Cybersecurity Directorate and the chairman of the Telecom Security Board, and is representing Romania on the ECCC governing board. So over to you, Dan. A privilege and an honor to introduce you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much, Gabriel and Tal, for having me here. It's truly an honor and a privilege to join you guys and to share some views and some ideas in this particular context. Before I bother you with a couple of slides that I prepared and I have at hand, and I wanted to use them just as a small modest support for our conversation, just wanted to share with you some thoughts regarding the cybersecurity for maritime sector. In my previous life, I had a bit the chance to be consultant, contractor, and to deal with, surprise, surprise, cybersecurity in the maritime sector on the request of one interesting European cybersecurity agency, which is ENISA, as you know, the European Policy and Strategy and Cooperation Cybersecurity Agency. I had a couple of clients, mainly from the public sector, but also private sector, whom core business was really maritime infrastructure, maritime transport, and of course, dealing with risks, dealing with challenges coming from the cybersecurity side of this sector. So let me share with you a couple of slides. As I was introduced, I'm representing in Romania one national authority on cybersecurity. It's the brand new Romanian Cybersecurity Directorate. The name is no coincidence. There are other countries that have a directorate, as you may know very well. It's truly brand new authority because it was, technically speaking, created about 3 months ago. Of course, we don't start from scratch. We took over everything that was set Romania, but we added on top of it many new tasks, many new responsibilities. And of course, one of these and one of the most relevant is dealing with cybersecurity challenges, risks, attacks, threats in a variety of critical sector for Romania, and not only for European Union in general, but nevertheless dealing with this. And to be very honest, what other sector proved during those 2 years of pandemics being the most significant and relevant than the transportation, in particular maritime transportation, where we all saw how dependent the society, the economy is on this sector. So, of course, not only myself, but my colleagues here in Bucharest and a whole bunch of experts look carefully into those trends that make us worry. Because part of my job is to worry, of course. I worry day in, day out. I have to do it. And I don't want to panic, of course, and to panic our business partners. But nevertheless, there are certain trends that we all have to look at very carefully. So in Romania, there are not too many, at least not a very significant, very large number of maritime organizations, of actors of this nature. However, we are, I would say, part of a larger ecosystem of such actors, and everything that happened in the cyberspace with regards to those actors is highly relevant. And from my side and from the side of my colleagues as a national authority, we really look extremely carefully into those trends. So I had conversation myself with leaders of portual infrastructure, of transport companies, of infrastructure, of leaders of supply chain within the maritime sector. And almost half of them, a bit above 40%, according to my notes, they were very concerned about cybersecurity attacks, about cybersecurity risks in general, and they consider those as a high risk. So many of them, they told me straightforward, then cyber is now super high on the agenda of the top management, of the boards, and almost every board meeting, almost every top management meeting, in addition to business and finances and stuff, it pops up cybersecurity, infrastructure. when are we going to have an incident? When is going to hit us? And especially because at global level, about more than 1/3 of organizations in maritime sector, they experienced specific cyber attacks, attacks that they identified, attacks with impact on their infrastructure, on their activity, on their business, on their finances. Of course, if we also think in terms of infrastructure that maritime organizations have, it's obviously that the part that we have to worry, it's the operational technologies. It's not really the information technology. Simply because some of the most advanced technologies that are deployed currently are on vessels, on portual infrastructures, and so on. And the level of complexity, it's a bit scary. I must say, I'm not an expert in those technologies. I was a bit overwhelmed when some organizations presented them to me. They were super proud about how they were able to adopt them, to integrate them, to manage them. But as a cyber risk specialist, I consider myself a cyber risk specialist, I was really concerned about the complexity they have to handle. And let's not forget, they face a whole bunch of vulnerabilities in those technologies, some of them already known, some of them not yet known. And they face also systematically a significant number of cyber attacks, direct or indirect. Now, and this is what companies like Checkpoint tell us for 2021. It was also new to me. So we detect, we observe actually hundreds or even thousands of weekly attacks per organization in average. Let me share with you the Romanian figures that our own sensors, so our own data that we believe and we trust, tell us. So we detect daily at Romanian level anything between 300,000 and 800,000 attacks, starting from simple scans to denial of service, from SQL injection to more and more sophisticated type of attacks. So we detect about 300K till 500,000, more than 500,000 sometimes, attacks on a daily basis. Out of those, anything between 20,000, 30,000, we label them as significant or relevant attacks. And systematically, I would say, transportation sector actors that are impacted by those attacks, probably anything in the range of 20 to 50. Some of them actors that work in the maritime sector infrastructure, or they are operators or authorities on those. So it's quite a significant increase. Checkpoint says that for Europe, Middle East, and Africa, of course, there is a 36% increase in cyber attacks in 2021. And this trend is expected to really, really continue. It's not going to get flat. It's not going to increase exponentially either. So we are going to face a similar trend for the coming years. And my prediction is that probably would go like that for another 5, 10, 20 years easily. Now, coming back a bit to, and again, I'm not an expert in maritime sector cyber attacks, but I have to observe those. And I observed them as a contractor and as a consultant as well. And I was next to some of those organizations when they got hit by significant attacks. So we noted, and we all know the Maersk issue. We know the attacks on Port of Barcelona, on Port of Antwerpen. This is my favorite because it's in the country where I have my house and where I'm located. So I was very, very close to this. And up to the International Maritime Organization attacks that were observed. So I think when we discuss between ourselves, when we discuss with business leaders, probably, and I choose now very carefully my words, probably one of the very first concepts that we have to fix and to agree would be, surprise, surprise, the maritime cyber risk. Of course, we all have to deal with risk. We have to start from the very, very beginning. honestly, I found this one of the most difficult concepts to explain to decision makers, to business leaders, because they tend to jump directly into micromanaging, into decision mode. Let's do something, let's spend money, let's hire contractors, let's buy some cyber tools and stuff, without reflecting enough on what exactly means the cyber risk. How exposed is their organization to cyber risk of any way, form, and shape? So one message I wanted to convey to you, and I hope you may agree with me if you want. Probably instead of jumping directly sometimes in decision mode, in implementation mode, in let's do this and let's do that mode, probably will be not bad that we all collectively, we push a bit first on explaining some basic concepts and terms to, in particular, decision makers and business leaders. We are not talking here about experts like yourself. We are not talking about solution providers that work on fantastic technical solutions. I saw really impressive tools, impressive platforms available already that can be deployed very fast in the maritime sector. But I think we have to spend a bit of time during our day-to-day activity to fix some concepts and explain some concepts to the decision makers in the sector, to their business partners, why not to the regulators, to national authorities in transportation in general and maritime transportation and so on. Now, coming back a bit to what we noted in Romania in 2021. Actually, and I don't think it's that different compared with other countries, but this is a bit the specific for Romania. When we look at where precisely, in what sector attacks happen, the ones that you see on the screen are by far the ones that got most popular between quotas with the attackers in Romania. Surprise, surprise, public sector is there, transportation, including water transportation, is there, healthcare. To me, this was the most annoying one, because during this time period when everyone, hospitals and so on, they are busy in saving lives and protecting citizens and so on, they got hit by ransomware, by all kinds of malware. But also organizations like education, so universities. So Gabriel, I see him nodding and being worried a bit. Of course, universities, high schools, they are all targeted. These are the ones that we noted systematically being targeted in Romania. What made the difference in the transportation sector and in the maritime transportation, and I took the freedom to quote here the Finnish National Emergency Supply Organization, the super high complexity in the maritime ecosystem. Everything from port infrastructure to passenger and cargo registration systems, anything from, GPS and cargo tracking and crew network and cargo management and all kind of remote administration and maintenance activities that happen on the ship. Again, I'm not a specialist in this, but even I can see with the naked eye, it's getting super complex. It's getting super complex, but compared with other transportation subsectors like air transport, not the same level of scrutiny, not the same level of investment, not the same level of attention from the regulators, from the business owners, from the shareholders, stakeholders, and so on. So we are dealing really with a gigantic attack surface that is evolving continuously, where a lot of knowledge, we have to be very direct and honest here, stays with engineers, not with cybersecurity people, with IT people. So it's in the hands of the engineers, with an extremely complex supply chain for all those components, for all those systems. Luckily, they are not yet all of them fully integrated, fully interoperable, and so on. So can be still siloed, segmented, defended, let's say on segments, I would say. Now, when we looked for the case of Romania, and when I had some conversation with CISOs and business leaders from the Romanian maritime transport ecosystem, actually, the type of attacks that they were facing may look a bit simplistic. So everyone talked to me about phishing and vulnerabilities in the components they have to install. And the malware and ransomware as well were the main kind of attacks. Everyone worried about, of course, losing control on their data. So by far, data it's seen and it's acknowledged as being a super important asset for the industry and for the actors over there. And when I was talking to CISO in particular, but also with data protection officers, they told me then, as always, and as in many other industries, the weakest link is the human factor. So the end user that clicks on the link, that clicks on the document attached coming from unknown sources, and they don't know and they don't mind and they don't usually care about the consequences. So I would say from this perspective, nothing completely different compared with other industries. Nevertheless, the level of preparedness of regular users, of some middle management and key decision makers apparently is much lower compared with other transportation sectors, lower than usually the road transport, railway, and air transport. So that's feedback and perception provided to me by the people working in the sector, in the water transport in general, maritime transport in particular. Now, there are, I would say, tons of guidelines and best practices and standards and rules issued by a variety of great organizations. But bottom line, I think a message that we have to pass to the maritime transport organization is that they need to forget reinventing the hot water or the wheel, if you want, and sticking to a couple of simple while very basic steps. So I try to list them here in my humble opinion, and I'm not going to go into details, but basically governance and responsibility and accountability to be established for cybersecurity in each organization, identifying on who is who and who is involved in what, steering the process, and whatever effort they do it, steer it. And I had a tough conversation with one chief executive that told me straightforward, I have an IT team and I hired an IT security guy. It's their job to deal with this. And my reaction was, no, it's your problem and your responsibility as the leader of the organization. Should be high on your agenda. You cannot delegate this. So it was not a nice conversation, but I made my point and I think he understood it. And also very important, because we have high complexity of those organizations and super increased attack surface as well, on one hand, and on the other hand, certain capabilities in place already. So almost no organization I discussed with started from scratch. They did something, they had something. They have a policy or they have some tools or they provided some trainings to their people and stuff like that. But very few of them did a really, I would say, comprehensive and true assessment of their overall capabilities, of their status, where they stand, with regards to best practices, with regards to guidelines, and so on and so on. And of course, when we get in the Romanian Directorate, when we get contacted by such organizations, typically it's always after an incident happened, and we noted they don't really have a strategy and they don't have the most basic plans in order how to deal with incident. Of course, they have procedures and playbooks and stuff to handle it, but that's all. This playbook and those procedures are with 2-3 people from the organization that have to handle the incident, if they can, of course. But when we talk to them, organization-wide, completely unprepared, really no strategy on how to handle cyber risks and cyber incidents and attacks in general, no plan on how to respond. Now, the good news, and you know much better than me, tons, literally tons of guidelines. So they're all over the place. Simple Google or a simple search on, let's say on the net, you can find really a ton of great material. But my own reflection was that very few people working in the domain, except the very few that are really CISO or information security officer or the technical guys, very few are aware of those, bother to read them or bother to implement them by the book, of course, within their own organization. So I think here one reflection that I wanted to share with you is that probably individually and collectively, we are not talking enough about those guidelines that exist. And we may have the habit of attempting to develop new ones, which is super okay, instead of let's start and using what already exists and can be leveraged with reasonable effort. So even in Romania, as you may know, we have a law transposing the NIS directive, the European NIS directive, into local law, with a whole bunch of secondary and tertiary legislation that was defined, that exists. And I must say, almost every week we get questions like how we should do it. And everything is written there. And the organization should just read it and apply it. But they typically are missing the talent, the expertise, the people able to do this. So my point here on this particular slide is that there are guidelines. When I went through them myself, I was quite happy with what I saw there. I was trying to put the hat of CISO, let's say, in a maritime sector organization, and I was thinking, if I will be in that position, I will have a very good basis to start from. Of course, it's not only what's on the paper. You need to convince the management to give you the resources, the budgets, the stuff, the tools that you need to put in place. But we don't start from a blank piece of paper. We can start from some. Now, just a few more words about what we want to do in Romania. Because as I said, and as you were kind to introduce me, we have a new governmental body, a new directorate. According to the law, the ambition is to get up to 1,250 staff members, which is serious stuff. I don't think there is any such organization in Europe, not even the larger one like an SSAE in France or a BSI in Germany or the new Italian cybersecurity agency. None of them get to this level. Of course, for the moment, it's on paper, 1,250. We aim to go in maybe 10 years to get closer to this figure. We'll never reach it because it will be impossible to find such amount of talent in the market and get them in a governmental organization. That will be mission impossible. So we don't have to be naive thinking this, but it's really, really a strong indicator at the level of Romania on how serious we want to tackle the topic of cybersecurity. Of course, surprise, surprise, even I learned and even I know that no actor, doesn't matter how large it is, can handle alone the challenge, the topic. So in particular for maritime transportation sector, the expertise, I must say it very straightforward, is not with the government. The expertise is with academia, is with people working in those organizations. They know the industry. They know the assets they have to protect. They have the best information at hand and the best situational awareness on the threat actors, on the type of attacks, on the tools, technologies, procedures used by attackers. in order to target the assets. Now, the good news is that from a governmental perspective, at least in Romania, we want to play ball. We want to really cooperate. We want to do a lot more than what we did in the past. In the past, for Maritime, to be very clear, it was almost nothing. It's a lot to be done. Now we have the legal framework in place. We have the mandate to really support economic sector by economic sector. Maritime sector, the maritime transport industry, it's really one of the key, in my opinion. According to the law, almost everyone in there, it's operator of essential services. So we have to support them. They have to build proper teams and proper security baseline, and they need to be audited, and they need to report incidents, and so on and so on and so on, according to the law. And we try with the new Romanian Cybersecurity Directorate to really find the best way to collaborate with them. It's not only collaborating with the actors, we have to collaborate with academia, we have to collaborate with solution providers. And the one message I wanted to convey is that personally, I have mega high expectations to see state-of-the-art, industry-focused solutions available. There are many available already, but everything that is available today, it's totally insufficient. We may need to have innovators, startups, the current companies, the current corporations to really come continuously with new and new and new solutions to put these tools in the hands of information security, cybersecurity officers responsible in those organizations in order to allow them to handle the challenge. Otherwise, we're going to be nowhere and totally exposed. So we need really, truly, and I truly believe this, an entire ecosystem working together. No hiding the elephant, just saying we have a challenge. Yes, it's doable to address it in a pragmatic, cost-effective, large-scale approach. Yes, as well. At least the good news from Romania is that now we have a national governmental civilian actor willing to cooperate, to be next to the actors in the sector, in the maritime sector, to the researchers, next to academics, next to startups and businesses and technology providers to tackle the issue. The way I see it, if we don't move swift and sharp in 2, 3, 5 years, the complexity, the technological complexity that we are going to face will be of such magnitude that will cost us, all of us, enormously to fix it, to address it. So better start sooner rather than later. From this perspective, I truly, truly, and I mean it, I welcome your initiative, and I think this monthly series of events, of initiatives to discuss around this topic, to focus on what is key and core for the maritime sector, I think it's more than welcome, literally more than welcome. And let's not forget, here in this geography, in this region, but also in Asia Pacific, in Americas, everyone has the same challenge, and we all struggle how to deal with it, how to join forces, and how to move on. So that's what I wanted to convey to you as a small message from a national authority, and I'm here with you for continuing the conversation and answering questions and exchanging ideas and anything John, as a moderator, will allow me to do.
I'm not going to allow any questions on that because it was just so wonderful. Now, obviously, Dan, what an incisive and very creative speech. Thank you so much for bringing that to bear, and the perspectives that you have on this have shed light on some of the more salient problems that I think we all face. And you seem to have a great handle on that. So it's a real privilege to hear you. Do we have any questions from the floor? Would anyone like to ask Dan any questions?
I wanted to ask, I'm the CEO of Cybersecurity. We provide cybersecurity for the maritime industry. And my question is, you talked a lot about responsibility, etc. And I think that we all agree there is a problem with responsibility in general. Who is responsible, the the board of directors, the CEO, the CTO, the CIO, etc. And usually this is in the maritime industry, this is kicked off to the lowest point possible. My question here to you as someone that represents the legislation here is what about enforcement? Because I agree, this is the responsibility of the organization, but in the end, I think that we need three actors here. We need the industry to be responsible and provide solutions, like you said. We need the academy to impulse the matter to provide professionals to the industry, etc. And in the end, we need the government to help with legislation and with enforcement in the end. So I wanted to ask, what is your opinion about enforcement in the cybersecurity for the maritime industry?
It's let me share you a real life example. I cannot code names, of course, but what we identified from the Directorate as operator of essential service according to the Romanian law. So we notified that organization and we told them, hey guys, according to the law, you are labeled as operator of essential services from a cybersecurity perspective. So you must do this and this and this. You must be registered, you must hire cybersecurity staff and report incidents, of course, exceeding a certain impact and magnitude. And you must have a security baseline and be audited periodically by an independent auditor, etc. And the mind-blowing answer we get on paper, writing from such organization was like, no, we are not operator of essential services. No, why should we deal with cyber? Our business is not cyber. We have to do transportation and so on. So we're like, okay, the law says that you are. Of course, according to the law, and I must make a clear statement here for Romania, according to the law, you can fine such organization. Issue them a fine that can go up to 3% of the turnover of that legal entity that is subject to the law. Personally, I'm a believer in the carrot and the stick concept. I don't think that simply issuing fines and going with punishments, it's the most appropriate way to determine an organization to look seriously into cybersecurity, to invest actually. What I believe in the power of an industry to self-regulate from this perspective. I mean, to have the peer pressure on a member of the industry, of the community, because if they look around and they see that all other, let's say, maritime transport companies, they have super good practices and they reach a certain level of maturity in cybersecurity and so on, it will be peer pressure. The industry associations, in some cases, they have much stronger influence than a cybersecurity regulator. And at the end of the day, and this is current conversation I have with CEOs from this type of companies, the cost of fixing an incident and cleaning up the mess afterwards, it's always much higher than any investment they make in cybersecurity within their own organization. So I think from an approach perspective, I think the best approach is still the collaborative conversation. And again, explaining, increasing awareness with the decision makers. I don't believe, at least for Romania, maybe in other countries it's working, but in Romania, trying to punish them, to threaten them with fines and stuff is not the most productive manner. And we don't want to do that. We really want to transform these organization leaders, these organizations in believers in cybersecurity. They must own it. They must get it on board. They must do it because they believe it's good for business to have a really high maturity in cybersecurity, and not because the regulators tells them to do so. So I wanted to clarify a bit this. So of course, we are not going to hesitate to issue fines if needed, but it's not our preferred approach. We prefer a more collaborative approach, conversation, we want them to lead by example, to be the good examples, and to own it. It's not our, let's say, we don't own it. I'm not the owner of security aspects within company A or B or C. They must get it. If they don't, I cannot do their job. It's very simple. So I don't know if I succeeded to clarify, but we don't want to take a punitive approach, 100%. However, we are not going to hesitate to issue gigantic fines if needed.
Thank you very much.
May I have a question for Mr. Cipan, please, as well?
Of course, please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, John. Well, we know that Romania was elected to be the cyber hub of EU. Can you please, Mr. Cipan, elaborate on it and the role of Romania in EU, and what will be the meaning of such cybersecurity hub of EU?
Yeah, I put now a bit different hat. I put my hat of board member of that European Cybersecurity Competence Center. So I have the honor and privilege to be the representative of Romania in the board. And it's no secret, I'm running for the chairman of the board. So to be very transparent with you, is not confidential info. It's okay. Is known. How I see it and how I see the role of Romania in this context. So let's not forget that European Cybersecurity Competence Center. It's an illustration of the level of investment that European Union makes now in cybersecurity in general, which is a level of, it's an unprecedented level so far by any dimension. So we are talking here about billions and billions, I think 4.7 billion, if my memory serves me well, through a number of financing programs, 4.7 billion, focused, dedicated to cybersecurity innovation, research, cooperation as well, etc., etc. So the way I see it, at this moment, there are specific needs in a variety of industries, maritime industry included, that require proportionate, specific, highly sophisticated, highly complex responses. So actually, such industries, such actors, entire ecosystems, they need new solutions, large-scale solutions. They need cost-effective ways to cooperate, to collaborate. They need new tools, a new type of services and solutions in their hands in order to be able to tackle the cyber challenges they have. One of the roles of this European Cybersecurity Competence Center will be to finance the research, innovation, developing of new pilots, implementing of those solutions, and so on and so on a large scale. By chance and by coincidence, such center is going to operate in Bucharest, Romania. For the moment, it's active on paper. So the regulation was adopted by European Union in June. And still, for the moment, the European Commission is still providing from Brussels the core staff functions of the new center. Of course, from this perspective, and I can tell this is public info, this is one of my top priorities and the top priority for many board members. We really want this center, this European, it's not an agency, it's a center. The center to be operational and up and running as soon as possible. Mainly because it has to interact with a very gigantic group of stakeholders, with universities and incubators and startups and freelancers and corporates and governments and so on, and get all of them to work together on this new set of solutions that we all need, that can be scaled up. Of course, many of those programs will be still geared towards universities, legal entities located in Europe. Some of the programs will be open for what the European Union calls third countries as well. So it can be any other countries, from Canada to Israel, from, I don't know, Turkey to Brazil, and so on. So, but nevertheless, the most critical aspect is that it must get operational fast. And from this perspective, there are huge expectations in the market. There are huge expectations from the member states, from the governments, because as you may know, each government had to create something called National Coordination Center, which is a kind of national center that will have to animate the entire cybersecurity ecosystem and talk to, again, to the same actors, academia and businesses and so on, and make everyone work together. So Europe currently is creating such gigantic ecosystem and community in the same time that has to focus on the top cybersecurity problems of the Union. And to focus not from a purely theoretical mode, but really pragmatic, building solution in program mode, in project mode, where the keyword would be cooperation, where will not be organization A or B or university A or B dealing with a topic, where you'll have to have a small or larger consortium of players really working together on that. And one of my tasks, if I succeed to get chairman of the board, will be not only to make sure that I get the tour of everyone and get everyone on board. Everyone, I know it's a big word and it's super comprehensive, but to identify also those financing mechanisms, because I truly believe 4.7 billion, although it's a lot at the first sight, it's in reality completely insufficient for what actors in Europe needs in terms of investment in cybersecurity. So one of my tasks will be to get a tour of every single European government, government from European Union member states, I mean, and get them to match at least 1-to-1, euro for euro, the investment of the center. So, and of course, private actors, etc. So stay tuned, because a lot will happen. We hope much faster than what was done so far by the European Commission, because everything is already delayed by 6 months. And I hope that we'll be able to collaborate together in a variety of super interesting programs and projects that will be launched and managed by this European Center, where Romania will be very active. I can guarantee that myself and my colleagues, we are going to play ball and be super active and cooperate with everyone that wants to do the same.
Thank you, Dan. Gabriel, do we have time for any?
Yes. It is interesting that there is a common approach between authorities, companies, and academia. I'm very happy with the pragmatic approach and the direction that Dan Competence supports right now, because only active educational and focused support measures can have lasting and measurable effects on the timescale. It is known that it is hard to make high-performance cybersecurity with not so high resources. And you, Dan, succeed here. How can Romanian experience in cybersecurity can be exported at European level? It's kind of success recipe here. Can you tell us something about this?
As you may know, luckily, Romania has a very important asset. It has quite a significant number of brains on the topic. The Romanian education system, it's still producing, luckily, quite a significant number of graduates, very well trained, very skillful, very competent. Unfortunately, we export those brains, but we export them as raw material. So we export the expert, boom. Now we don't even move them outside the country. They work from their home for clients exclusively out of many of them. They work for clients exclusively outside Romania. But let's not forget, it's a very, very core asset. I think what we really want to do is put those brains at work, but in a more structured manner, in a kind of value-added high value added approach. So let me explain a bit what I mean by this. I would prefer that we don't just do body shopping and we provide brains left and right wherever they are needed, in Germany and United States and Israel and here and there. I think it will be better that we inject some grants, some funds in a lot of startups, in a lot of projects that by design and by default enforce cooperation with businesses, academias, etc., freelancers and those young graduates, really to expose them to such competitive environment, to such business environment, to such innovation environment. Because I think this is where we are losing a big track. I mean, we get graduates, they start working from the very beginning, but they lose a bit the entrepreneurship. They lose and they don't build enough of, let's say, confidence in their abilities to expand a business, to create a business, to create large-scale solutions. So they end up being super good technicians, but with no, as I said, entrepreneurial spirit. So we really want to work a bit on this part. But you cannot do it except if you really have true, serious public-private partnerships, very pragmatic, focus on projects and discuss money. But let's not forget, cybersecurity is one of the domains where the return on investment is gigantic. I come from there. I know what it means. I was running a business on cybersecurity. So it's really a very strong business case. So to sum up a bit on this part, we are going to showcase our assets, the ones that we have at national level, insist and focus a lot on this partnership concept, public-private partnership, international by design, and talk a lot about return on investment for cybersecurity. We don't want to steal from engineers and from computer science, but I have to sell my merchandise to you as well. Cyber is cool. It's hot. I mean, if I will start now in my career, I will go in cybersecurity for sure, because the perspectives are super great, especially for this international cooperation.
Thank you. Thank you for your response.
Thank you very much. So, Dan, once again, I'm sure we'd all like to thank you. I don't know how you do a virtual round of applause, but I'm sure it looks something like this. And I'd like to say thank you very much for those incisive words and comments that you made and the value that you brought to this presentation this morning. With that, it gives me great pleasure now to move on to our next speaker, which is Nir Ayalon. Would that be the correct way of saying it, Nir? Because I invariably get people's names wrong, and I always find it really awful to do that. Nir is an entrepreneur with international experience in cybersecurity, data protection, and disaster recovery. Nir is CEO of Cydome, protecting the maritime supply chain cybersecurity. He previously led data protection and disaster recovery in IBM, has a BSc in computer science, EMBA, and is a PhD candidate. Nir is an ISO committee member both in cybersecurity and in ships and maritime technology. With that, it gives me great pleasure to hand the floor over to you, Nir, and please give us your presentation. Thank you.
So first of all, thank you very much to all the organizers, Gabriel and Tal. Dan, it was great to hear what Romania has planned for the future, and I think this is wonderful, and I hope that the other countries will join as well. First of all, a little bit about Cydome. So we, as I said before, we provide cybersecurity solutions for the maritime supply chain, mainly to maritime vessels. And when Gabriel asked me to do a 2021 end of year summary, it was a big honor, and it let me go over everything that happened in the last year in the maritime and in the cybersecurity area. And it's a great honor because this year is special. 2021 is the first year, basically, that the maritime cybersecurity is on the map. I think that before that, first time that the cybersecurity and maritime was introduced to the public, I think was about 2018 when the IMO, when BIMCO released some first cybersecurity document, and the IMO decided to implement or to insert it into the safety management system. But it was just a recommendation and something to speak about later on. And just this year, everything started. So thank you very much for the opportunity to do this end of year summary. To do this, I asked several people to help with this summary, and you will see them in a few minutes. But the idea is to go over what is happening at the moment in the maritime industry, what happened in 2021, the major events that happened, talk a little bit about solutions that are that we can, or how can we solve the problem and close the gap, and what is next. So let's start. So first of all, as we all know, 90% of all global shipping is on the maritime industry, on the maritime supply chain. It's a bit more of 90%, and I think that we all saw what happened in the last year. The COVID just pushed the market into a very difficult, a very great perspective of where the market is from one side. From the other side, the market today, all the ships are working non-stop, fully implemented, and in the end, we need to remember again that it's a very complex environment with a lot of moving parts, like Dan said, and the ship itself is the weakest link in this chain. We have a lot of communication that entering into the vessel. We have a lot of IT systems that are in the vessel itself. We have a lot of OT systems, and most of them are not protected, and most of them is a combination between legacy systems that were installed maybe 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago, and new systems that were installed yesterday, like navigation system, etc. And all this just brings us to a very difficult and a very complex problem when we have a big part of our supply chain not protected in the end. The shipping problem, as we saw this year, can affect us all very quickly. So I think that the Ever Given just gave us a very simple example what happened when a single vessel take the wrong turn. And we can see here from Anderson Horowitz's blog that the Ever Given was not a one-off disaster country on the other side of the world. It's a global phenomenon. It's a global problem, and we all should understand it. It's not. We are all a very small village in terms of the maritime industry. It's difficult to speak about Romania in different terms of Egypt, Israel, or any other country. In the end, the same vessel will go from Romania, get to Haifa port, and move towards Singapore. And we know we need all the ecosystem to be secure in the end. Digitalization, so I said about shipping is moving, but digitalization is also moving very fast forward. As you see the numbers, a little bit about the numbers, the digital market in the maritime industry is going to be more or less twice in 2030. And we see a lot of changes that happening now. We see a lot of autonomous vessels that are trying, a lot of autonomous, in general, autonomous technologies that are out there. And we understand that this technology is going to come inside the vessels. We see a lot of remote monitoring and a lot of solutions that need more more digitalization and more communication, and the market provided. So we have today more communication. We have much more technologies that is entering into the maritime industry. But in the end, to support this kind of digitalization and very fast-track digitalization, we need a very strong and secure backbone, a technological backbone. And the first thing in a backbone is to have it secure, to know that when you transfer data, it's secure from a secure place to a secure place, to know that all your systems are controlled by you. Dan earlier showed some drawing of a ship with a lot of systems that each one of them, if a small problem happened in one of them, all the supply chain can be ruined. So we need to know that we are working on a very strong backbone, and this is a real problem. And I wanted to show you a small example of a company that is providing a very new solution, a very new technology that have exactly this problem. So they have a solution, they want to implement it, they have how to implement it, but it's always blocked by the cybersecurity issues. So let's hear Dr. Miravis Yousefi. Let's hear him.
Hello, thank you very much for this opportunity to tell a bit about our system. Let me take a step here and tell you about what we do. So, my goal is today to tell you a bit about marine innovation and the need for cybersecurity. And for this, I will use our system as a use case to explain, at least from what we need as future requirements. Yeah? The first question I have to ask you is, why are marine systems still analog? Yeah? If you look at the cheapest car today, they have parking sensors. And now if you borrow your car to your teenager who will put a scratch on it, you can always buff it out with a bit of polish. And there you go, you have a clean car. This is of course not possible for a multi-million-dollar ship. You cannot just buff out a scratch, and definitely cannot buff out the scratch of the harbor. So what we are trying to do is to bring this whole into the digital domain by using laser sensors, cameras, and 3D point cloud technology. We generate a picture of the environment, a common picture of the environment of the ship, and give the captain a 360 degrees perception. Like this, we generate huge amount of data, 3D data measurements, and the captain can understand what he's doing, how he's doing, and our algorithms can do some higher level processing also. Great, you would say, fine, thank you. But what's next? Well, that means now that our system, the data that we generate becomes a critical part of the marine infrastructure. Locally, this is used for collision avoidance, for docking assistance, but that means that the captain has to rely on the data coming in as if it was from his own eyes. On the global level, or as it's called cloud today, this data needs to be shared with this data and the metadata, and the captains and his colleagues on other ships, and also people on the harbor or people at the control center, needs to have a reliable data set coming back and forth in order to make global decisions. This brings a very high demand on security for future innovations, at least from our perspective. Well, since our system will eventually become mission critical, it will be required for risk mitigation and also for traceability. For example, if such a system was available on the Evergreen in the Suez Canal, the post-processing of the incident could have been done much faster and much more efficient and save a lot of money. Yeah, this will also generate huge data set. Just for a single ship, we expect to generate tens of millions of 3D data points per second. This has to be transferred locally, but also the metadata generated here has to be transferred globally to the cloud. Yeah? The most important requirement on this system is that it has to be low latency and real time. This means you cannot just park the data into a sandbox and say, okay, I will process this later, I will go through this later. No, security has to be real time. Which brings us to the high demands on security. So You need very reliable local networks. The captain has to trust the data coming in as if it was his own eyes. You need ultra-safe clouds. The colleagues of the captain and the rest of the people interested in the ship and the infrastructure, including the harbor side, has to trust this data and has to be able to rely on this data. You also need a very, very safe up and down link, because nobody should be able to inject data into the link of the captain or of the harbor in order to hijack this or to make crazy decisions or crazy things, let's say. Yeah. So what does this mean? This means you need very ISO certified systems. Maybe some of the ISO qualifications need some of the ISO levels needs to still be defined. I'm quite sure some of them are still not even defined, but the data integrity has to be very, very high, because this is the only way to be sure that you are interacting in a global safe environment. Thank you very much for your time. I hope I have been able to convince you. Bye-bye.
So a little bit about what happened so far. So you see that maritime cyber attacks are moving up. I think that we all know it. And it's not going to stop. We're not going to stop in 2022. We're just going to see much more attacks. Everything is ready to have more attacks. When I say everything is ready, is that we are giving a lot. The attack surface at the moment is making very wide approach. We give a lot of places of where potential attackers can use in order to enter. So they can use attack vectors that are inside the vessel, outside the vessel. They can use OT, they can use IT, they can use the communication, and all those aspects are just going and bringing everything for in technology aspect for the potential attacker to be able to do that. Again, something that we already discussed, but the supply chain, in the end, we have the ships that is doing the most of the job, and it's the weakest link in the end, and a little bit why the challenge is such a difficult thing. Like, why not using off-the-shelf solution in order to solve the problem? So again, first of all, legacy systems that are installed and modern system in the same place. Always, when you install legacy system and modern system in the same place, there is a security risk. And in the maritime industry, this is something that is done heavily and not always with security mapping or a gap analysis to understand what is the consequences of installing a new system. And in the end, a vessel is an island. You have a crew that is out there for a few weeks or a few months without any IT personnel on board. And we need to remember that during the COVID, no one was allowed to board the vessel. So it was even more difficult to solve problems. So we don't have any IT personnel, and especially we don't have any cybersecurity professionals. So every problem that happens on board needs to be solved remotely or by an autonomous system that will solve the problem for us. And the last thing is that maritime, as always, has its specific protocols, its specific standards. The OT of the maritime industry is not the same as the OT in IIoT, in industrial OT, which we need to give solution for this kind of problems. And again, the complexity, the system of systems, that there are a lot of subsystems out there that all of them needs to be monitored and defended and to be able to recovery when something is happening. And this is a major challenge. So what happened if a cybersecurity, a cyber incident will take place in the maritime industry? So Dan spoke a little bit about the national or the international consequences, but there's also the price that the owners will pay. And I think that John and Dan talked about it, that the solution in the end should be, it's something that cannot be compared with the event that will happen, with the amount of money that need to be invested in order to solve a problem. So for example, a price for one vessel that will go off hire on a single day will be about 100K. And I can tell you today, during the COVID, it's about 200K a day, $200,000 a day for a vessel that just stopped. And regarding to a single cyber event, we already saw what happened with MERS, but we can say that $300 million is something that already happened. We saw different numbers around this number, but this is a price of an event. We can also discuss about reputational, regulatory fines, etc. But everything in the end comes to the fact that the managers, the CEOs of the companies need to take responsibility and do everything in their hands to do a gap analysis, to have a solution, and to get this supply chain to the right place. So we'll start with bringing what 2021 had for us. So first of all, we started this year with the SolarWind event. I will try to move fast about the events and stop only about the events that I think that might interest you guys in terms of cybersecurity in the maritime. But SolarWind was a very important event. It happened in 2020 and affected all 2021, still affecting a lot of the critical infrastructure, and the maritime industry is inside this, especially in ports. So first of all, in January, the IMO regulation kicked in. The regulation basically started from the beginning, from the 1st of January this year. The US Coast Guard was basically the first one that did something in regards and started implementing and releasing their own regulation and what will happen if a vessel is not comply with the cybersecurity US regulation. And it's not only fines, it's also ship detained, etc. So it's very important. And this is how we started this year. In March, we already saw the Suez Canal blockage. We all felt it. We all saw it in the news, but in the end, we all felt it in everything, in the prices of the goods that we buy, in the amount of vessels that are still waiting to enter into ports. And it just showed us that a single vessel, the effect of a single vessel that can do to the whole supply chain. April, we already saw a cyber attack on an offshore company, which was very interesting, just starting a series of cyber attacks on the maritime industry. May, this is us, so Sidom and Inmarsat signed a cooperation agreement to help. Inmarsat is the biggest satellite VSAT supplier today in the maritime industry. And we're working together to have a better, from one side, a better understanding of the problem, from the other side, a solution for all Inmarsat users that to supply them with the opportunity to have cybersecurity, to have a much more faster, since Inmarsat is already in the market, to have a very fast adaptation. And for us, it's helping a lot in terms of research, etc. Afterwards, we saw several attacks. We saw HMM Cyber Attack. HMM is a Hyundai a shipping company. Afterwards, we saw two ferries companies hit. Carnival Cruise hit again. For Carnival Cruise, is the fourth time in the last 12 months that it was hit. So we just see that the maritime industry is adding new technology and adding new cybersecurity problems. In July, the South Africa port attack, this attack basically blocked the port for several days, cost several millions to fix, and showing us again that, that the maritime industry is not just the vessels. We need to defend all the maritime supply chain, and ports are a big part of it, obviously. During August, we saw those six ships that lost control in front of Dubai, which again showed us how vulnerable this industry is. If an external organization can take control of 6 vessels when it wants, we have a big problem. In August, we also saw the Revil attack on a critical infrastructure. In September, we saw a very interesting event when the AIS, the Automatic Identification System of the vessels, which is a system that every vessel in the world report its location, and everyone, all the ships can see in real time where a vessel is for several reasons. But what happened is that 2 NATO warships, its location was spoofed and showed like these 2 vessels are in another place, something that might, since those are warships, might have go into the wrong side of a political or social political problems. In September, we also saw Cma Cgm Cyber Attack, and October we saw a very interesting attack recently in Greece, of where about 50 Greek companies were hit by a single attack, and that in the end, all those 50 companies were connected to each other. But again, this is showing where we are in the market. The market is not protected. Every event is doing a lot of damage. And again, everything that we see here are just things that were reported to the news, etc. There are a lot of events that we know about that we cannot share, that are very interesting. But again, I can show here everything that is public. November, Swire Shipping got hit, another offshore company. In the same month, we saw several movements from the market. So Class K gave the first cyber notation for a new build vessel, and signed a cybersecurity MOU with Panama, which is very interesting because we need to remember that Panama is one of the largest flag states. Many vessels are registered under Panama, and this MOU allow Panama and the vessels that are under the flag of Panama to share more information and to give them some tools to move forward in terms of cybersecurity. In November, we also had Revil, one of Revil Group, arrested. It was in Romania, if I'm not mistaken. This Revil Group affected many of the attacks that we saw before. And I think it's very interesting the amount of effort that countries gave in order to get to those attackers. So this month, I think that Log4Shell or Log4j just made the month a whole, or made a year, and just showed us where we're in general in terms of cybersecurity. I think this is one of the worst problems that we have. A lot of systems are affected. A lot of systems that are in the maritime industry are affected, are using today Log4j, and therefore the Log4Shell vulnerability exists. and I'm guessing that we will hear about it in the next few months, about the events that will happen because of this problem. By the way, our system is obviously already searching for vulnerabilities in the maritime industry and searching for systems that have this vulnerability. 2022, let's see what it's bring along with it. But as you saw, the amount of attacks and events is just rising, and I'm sure that it will continue. Regarding regulation, I don't want to enter into regulation. I think that we spoke about regulation enough, and Dan also spoke about it. But in general, this is something that we see. The regulation is here. We see a lot of regulation. It's a real question if how countries should adapt to the regulation. So the US already decided to enforce and to make sure that that regulation is enforced in US vessels. But the rest of the world will need to decide what to do with it, and I think that we will see next year what will happen. I don't know if Alon is here, but Alon is going to show us a little bit about CIDOM system and what we are offering to the market. First of all, as I said before, we need to protect the maritime supply chain in the end, not only a vessel. And CIDOM is bringing a whole chain approach. It's not a single device, and it's not a single vessel. It's not a single fleet. In the end, we have a whole chain that need to be protected. We need to have solutions out there that are adaptable and can adapt to every change and to learn with a lot of new technologies, with a lot of machine learning that can be implemented and learn and to adapt to everything that is happening. Alon, are you with us? The microphone is yours.
Guys, I want to take a bit of a practical approach on talking about the actual challenges that facing when we came and started basically trying to build a solution for the weakest link for the actual vessels in this unique environment. So first of all, the cybersecurity, we're talking about a shipwide protection, and in a bit I will explain a bit what does it mean. Some of the challenges that we faced when coming to approach this problem, how to protect vessel. First of all, it's to take the understanding that it's very different from the traditional environments that we are used to seeing. So we cannot really compare it fully to an office and not fully for a factory. We're talking about a branch center of an organization, which is also a factory, which is also magically moving all the time. So first thing that we understood that we need to design something that is meeting the maritime environment challenges. So first of all is covering all the systems. We already talked about the different aspects of systems. So we have the communication, we have the IT, and we have the OT. All those systems are working on board and together are working together to provide everything the ship needs, but also together are part of the cybersecurity chain that we need to protect. Nir mentioned about new technologies that are entering vessels. So the situation in vessels today that we have vessels aging from 20 years to newer ones, but most of them have a few years on the sea and they were not designed for cybersecurity. Most of them, if not all of them, at least not completely. So we need to provide a solution that is covering the crew, personal computers and phones, the business side of the IT network, which is all the computers that are used for communication with shore, getting documents, updates, etc. And we have the operational technology, so all the engines, the navigation equipment, cargo control system, and many, many, many more. Each one of those can risk the entire vessel, can risk the entire operation, which can lead for all the stuff that we already talked and I will not cover again. So next challenge is basically the crews. We need to understand that we worked with many companies from very big to very, very small. And what we see in most of them is that the IT is a very small team, even if in the big ones. We're talking about, in many cases, 1 or 2 personnel covering 50 vessels, let's say, average. And in many cases, they are also responsible for the office itself. So we're talking about very understaffed personnel, and in many cases, not cybersecurity trained, at least not in a level to protect the entire fleet, especially when you don't have the tools. So we understood that we need to make a solution that is suitable for those conditions, and also to be able to do work from the team on board. So one of the biggest challenges is that there is no IT personnel on board. Like the maximum you have is you have some people with some IT knowledge, but it's very basic. So you need to have a system that is providing the information in a way that even an untrained personnel, untechnical personnel can understand what the steps that should be done in case that it doesn't have right now remote assistant of IT personnel, etc. Next thing is, and I think Corona times is raised this point to the table for all companies working with remote locations, is basically how can we do a deployment in those environments. So deployments are not something new to the Maritime, but we understood that we need to provide a solution that we can just send to the customers in an easy way and plug it to XYZ and set up the system. So basically the design that we went through had to be plug and play, because basically we had months and months in the corona time that we couldn't go on board any vessels, and actually nobody could go on board and nobody could go from the ship. So not even the IT of the company could go on board. And works autonomously. Nir mentioned it before, and again it relates to the idea of the team that you have on board and the environment. So 2 things here. First of all, not in all cases you have anybody that can actually do something about if you tell them, hey, you have a problem. Nobody can do anything because they don't understand what should be done. And this could be solved if you have somebody remotely that can assist you, but this is also not the case in many cases, because 1, many companies has limited IT personnel, as we said, and 2, network connection not always enables that. So the system has to know to react to scenarios in real time while nobody can attend it, even in those situations. So those are the main points, that the challenges that we need to face when we come and try to solve the cybersecurity aspect on the vessels themselves. We took a lot of time, resources to understand how to solve those challenges and keep everything autonomously secure and provide the tools required for the companies. In the way we're obviously working continuously to validate the solution for ourselves and for the customers. So we already talked about being certified by an Inmarsat. We are also certified by ISO 27001 and 17, which is for cloud protection, and also Cyber Essential. And I can say that we are continuously working with many class societies, companies, to get more certificates for our equipment. So that is a quick glance of the system that we built, more to emphasize some of the ways that we provided the solution, or the approach that we took to provide the solution for the challenges that we see in the daily basis. So what we can see is a fleet SOC. We created a fleet SOC, basically a centralized location that provides you full control and monitoring on your entire fleet. And now this is something that we tailor-made for the environment, meaning we have scenarios when you have one fleet, but in many cases you have multiple fleets that you're managing, because we have managing companies and we have operators, etc. So we are providing a quick SOC solution that will show you, okay, what you need to focus on, try to reduce the noise and give you exact steps. So you'll get information about each vessel in near real time. Really the only barrier is what's the satellite communication at that point of time. And some of the steps that we took to make it accessible for every kind of personalities, for example, creating a unique algorithm together with all other models in our system that can indicate what's your cybersecurity health of a specific vessels, and then we can talk about a fleet, etc. And then really gives in the operational level the tools to understand what needs to be done now. So here what we can see is basically what we will see inside the vessel, or if we want to understand a bit more about a specific vessel. So one thing that from our experience with customers, 90% of them doesn't have is any idea of what they have. So first thing, even if it's relatively straightforward, is providing them a view of what do they have in the systems, what do they need to protect. So we're obviously mapping all the IT system, we're mapping the OT system and providing the status of each device so they can understand what needs to be done. We were amazed about how much companies are not aware of what's going on in their networks, and basically it enables them to ignore the problem because technically it's not on the table. They don't know there is a problem. They just read a few articles, but it's not going to happen to me. So the solution is basically automatically mapping the entire network. It's doing active attack simulation and vulnerability scanning to try to detect the next place that somebody can attack you, show you parts. So Log4j was a great example because I think it was the vulnerability that affected and the biggest number of companies in the world. And obviously Maritime also has it. And if you look about traditional cybersecurity companies that are working hard to investigate which solution, which products are infected, etc., nobody is really doing it in the cybersecurity field for specifically maritime equipment or services. So this is something that cybersecurity companies that are for the maritime environment are working to investigate and help them. And another part that we're doing is actually helping the companies manage the regulation. This is something for them which is very time-consuming and hard, and we're trying to provide an automated way to tell them what are the gaps for them to meet the regulation. So just a few words about stuff that we saw on the way, which are really, I think, showing the problem. We use TeamViewer. We went to oil tankers, and actually they're using TeamViewer to remotely connect to the cargo control system to do maintenance. So we are talking about a fully loaded oil tanker that is connected by an old version of TeamViewer online, and no firewalls or any protection on board, and everybody is fine with that. It looks like very normal to them. We found several critical vulnerabilities on equipment of worldwide VSAT providers, basically affecting thousands of vessels. this is stuff that it's already resolved. We worked with them, but it was really from the beginning something that we saw on those equipment. Next one, please. All the unsecured systems. So legacy equipment is the biggest problem I think we can see in vessels. We saw companies brand that we forgot that were existing. And I'm talking about the main switches and routers and network equipment, basically the gateways to the vessels. Stuff you cannot even protect because that's it, it's end of life. And we continue to see vulnerable system and a lot of vulnerable systems. Every vessel we came on, we found hundreds of vulnerabilities to the equipment on board. So today we're already deployed containers, offshore vessels and tankers, and continuing with more and more fields such as super yachts and other fields that we will talk about further ahead. And I'm running out of time, so thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Alon. What next in general? What is next? I think that I spoke about it. Alon already spoke about the vessels, but in the end, we need to make sure that we protect also offshore facilities and ports. We already started working with the port. If we had more time, I could speak a lot about it, but I wanted to give Makiko Tani from Class NK, Deputy Manager of the Cybersecurity team, to share with us her end of year summary and talk a little bit about what Class NK, the Classification Society, did and accomplishes this year.
Hi everyone, and warm greetings from Japan. I'm Makiko Tani, and I'm Deputy Manager of Class NK Cybersecurity team, a Tokyo-based leading classification society. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak at this end of the year event. As a stakeholder who is responsible for critical infrastructure, 2021 was the year when we had to renew the sense of importance to realize the risk of connectivity. We started out the year with prevailing after effects of solar wind incident, you guys remember, and it reminded us of the supply chain interactions and rushed us to review our supplier policies, right? And along the year, we also witnessed the Colonial pipeline hack, the ransom that threatened the US big fuel pipeline provider until they had to stop the systems over a week. One of the lessons learned from this incident definitely was that we have to be even more aware of the growing convergences between the IT systems and OT systems and how they interact with each other in daily business operations. Yes, the connectivity expands our capabilities. It expands the maritime sector's capability as much as to reach out to the commercial use of autonomous shipping technology by the end of, let's say, 2025. But the thing is, in order to take advantage of the connectivity, we have to forethink its risk, cyber risks, before cyber criminals take advantage of it. So to address cybersecurity on board in the maritime sector, it's been always our strategy here at Class NK that collaboration is the key. The reason why I am here today and speaking here today is because we share this firm belief with CyDome, Constanta Maritime University, and I believe with the rest of the audience here today. And I know this is an year-end review event, so let me introduce two of our achievements of Class NK this year. So let me share some slides right now. Okay, so I hope you're seeing my slide now. So one of the achievements was that Class NK granted the very first cybersecurity notation for new ships, the Cyber G notation, in the early November this year. where we ensure the vessel was designed and built in accordance with the required level of cyber resilience at the time of delivery. Onboard cyber resilience should be strengthened through people, process, and technology aspects. Right here. And I believe the vessels coming into the market are required to provide sufficient visibility and protection by documentation and technologies to support operation after delivery. And this security by design concept was the basis of our class and guidelines for designing cybersecurity on board ships. And the notation did not take only the ship owners or shipbuilder, but it took the collaboration of the entire shipbuilding supply chain, including ship system manufacturers and providers, or the suppliers of the those IT equipment to provide the vessel the visibility and carry out the risk assessment, and to finally have necessary protection measures. And the famous CSF, the cybersecurity framework, the entire process towards cybersecurity, right? And the process of identify, protect, detect, and respond and recover, I think the class certification that I told you earlier dedicated particularly on improving the first two processes, identify and protect. Also, in our maritime sector, we have a long history of implementing safety management systems and ship security plan based on ISM and ISPS code respectively, that I think work, well, not entirely effectively, but sufficiently effectively for now to improve the respond and recover capabilities in terms of cybersecurity. So what I think we should focus additionally is to enhance the detect capability. And it is about knowing your threats you're exposed to and increasing your playbooks. And the question of how can we have better playbooks against the real world cyber threats so we can respond in case of an incident. Let me change the question here. How do we improve our emergency response procedures, say, against piracy? I believe the one most common and most practical way you might think of is networking with your industry colleagues and sharing experiences. Cyber incidents are nemesis in common, and we believe the stakeholders should cooperate each other to share cyber incident information to improve the playbooks, which led to Class NK's the other achievement this year, that we agreed on the MOU with Panama Maritime Authority, the biggest flag registry in the world, on launching cyber incident reporting initiatives. It is the first call for collaboration by the authority. In this voluntary-based reporting scheme, all vessels registered under Panama are recommended to submit cyber incidents to the online reporting form. And we, Class NK, we provide our expertise in cybersecurity in doing the analysis as well as assuring the anonymity of the information provider. So that was a quick review of the achievement we made here at Class NK cybersecurity team. And in another maritime event that I attended the other day, somebody said sharing is caring in enhancing cybersecurity. And I absolutely agree with this comment. We made it thanks to all of our clients, partners, and other interested parties who believed in the power of collaboration in cyber securing the maritime sector. Class NK, we are a third-party organization, and we are better positioned to provide a platform for the maritime sector to cooperate each other to fight against the emerging cyber threats. So now, to wrap up, the Omicron variant closed our border once again, it does not stop us from connecting and collaborating with the maritime cybersecurity defense allies in the coming year. All right, so if you have any thoughts, comments, and questions, please do contact with me and let's talk. Thank you very much and happy holidays.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank Maki for her words. It's very interesting, and I think the Class NK did a huge step toward a much better industry understanding. So I just want to wrap up. We talked about the disaster that is waiting to happen. And I think that we already discussed it, but in the end, we need to share forces and have the industry solutions and users, the academy and legislation to work together and to have a better understanding and solution in the end. I wish you all a happy 2022, a safe one, and that's it. Anyone has any questions?
May I have a question, please?
Please feel free to come back and ask me or any of the presenters any questions that you would like.
May I have one question, please?
Of course.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Nir and Anon, for this very enriching and important presentation. I would like to ask, during the past 2 years, we have this COVID-19 new era, and I wonder whether you saw any effect of the COVID-19 era on maritime sector as long as it's related to cybersecurity. I'll tell you, from data that I gathered and wrote several papers, I know that the most targeted sector during the COVID-19 was, of course, the healthcare sector. And my question is whether on the maritime sector, you saw such changes or increase in cyber attacks and challenges or threats as part of COVID-19 era. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Tal. So definitely. First of all, we discussed earlier about the digitalization, and due to the high demand of the shipping industry or the usage of the maritime supply chain, we see a lot of digitalization that's entering into the maritime industry, into ships. And then with the new technology, we see also a new attack vector that obviously is used a few weeks afterwards. So we definitely see a lot of new attacks, a lot of, not only new attacks, but the amount of attacks is rising. Part of it is because of the natural growth, but again, everything was accelerated because of the COVID-19. There are other factors that are unique for the maritime industry. For example, we had about a year that seafarers stayed on the vessels. They weren't allowed to go off the vessels, and this basically had a problem with communication home. And then companies like Inmarsat, for example, started giving free communication, Zoom communication, etc., to their personal computers. But we all understand what is happening when a personal computer gets a wide band that is passing through our systems, passing through the same VSATs as all our critical assets, as all our business and operational assets are using. And each one of them, each computer brings the communication to the family, but with many other surprises inside. So we see a lot of external attacks, we see a lot of internal attacks, a lot of new vulnerabilities on computers that connect into the internet, a lot of computers that are bringing their own payloads into the system. So yes, definitely we see changes. And we're going, again, this is not something, the COVID didn't stop the shipping industry, and the supply chain is still changing. We're in the middle of something that is going on. I think that we cannot give conclusions to the end of the COVID era. We're still learning everything. Again, the digitalization is moving fast forward, but we don't see the end of it. It's not something that we already have all the solutions installed. No, we have a lot more. And I believe that in the next 2-3 years, like Maki from Class NK discussed, we are going to see in 2025 already autonomous vessels. Those autonomous vessels will be, the base of them will be the actual vessels with all their cybersecurity challenges. So yes, it's going to be much more challenging in the next few years. Hope that I answered your question.
Thank you, of course. With your permission, just one more. We spoke about awareness and the need for awareness, level of awareness and knowledge. From your perspective, what is, if you need to summarize, accumulate it, what would you say is the level of knowledge and awareness of cyber threats in the maritime sector as you see it from your experience?
Very low, as low as it gets.
And why? What is the reason? Because it's old operational and information technology, because of the human capital. What is the main reason or reasons?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think that I agree. This is a very traditional industry. They know what they know. We in the end. The industry already operates a lot of years. We're not talking about an industry that was born 50 years ago. It's an industry that is going on a lot of time, and the industry always know what is good for them. The problem is that in the moment that we inserted new technology, it's not there. It's not maritime technology. The remote monitoring is not a maritime issue. It's a remote monitoring that is used in other places. And it was not designed only for the maritime industry. Like the Log4j. The Log4j is not for the maritime industry, but it affects the system that they're using. They're using ERP, they're using CRMs, and everything in the end is using the same libraries. This is the first thing. The second thing that, like I said, I think that there is a neglection from the governments. The IMO just this year released it, but again, the IMO is not an organization that can enforce anything. We need in the end the governments to start making sure that the responsibility is clear. Who is responsible for what should be done, and that what type of certification each one is going to need, etc. This is not happening. And until this will happen, I think that everything is on the base of events like we are now, on public opinion, etc. But it's a very closed, in the end, very closed market, which is difficult to make an awareness moving up, an awareness improvement.
Thank you, Nir, for your detailed answers. John, I saw that we have at least 2 questions. One from Dragoš Dima and one from Ms. Anna Maria Montano. Pardon, from Christina Dragomir. Sorry, yeah, we have 2 questions.
Do you think it's necessary to update of IMO's STCW convention with cybersecurity skills for seafarers.
It's
Open to anyone who feels they can take it.
Yeah, I can say my opinion. I think that the IMO is, in general, it's very important, but in the end, the IMO can make regulation every about 4 years. So it's going to be very difficult that from there, we're going to see a lot of changes. I think that in every opportunity that the maritime industry has to make to bring awareness into the market, this is the place. I think it should be part of the program of every seafarer. It's not something just for the IT personnel, etc. It's something that should start from the management, but the rest of the company, it should be part of their schedule, yearly schedule, what courses, what certification, etc.
I think that's an excellent response. Thank you. She can't respond at the moment, or they can't respond because their mic's not working. But we do have another question from Dragos, which is some insights about the integration and aggregations of cyber threats alerts presented here across the IRIS platform developed by Cma team and expertise from France. It's not entirely sure if we could get a bit more clarification for the question from Dragos, unless you can respond to that statement, or anyone. Okay, well, perhaps we can wait and they can rephrase the question. Gabrielle, you had a question.
Yes, I have a question. As you emphasized already, at least across the global industry, the Log4j problems are of particular danger, with a similar impact to last year's supply chain attack issues. In fact, Log4j, it's an attack in progress right now. It's a common things around the globe. Are there any estimates from Sidon part regarding the potential impact of Log4j in the maritime sector? Do you expect something dangerous and increasing progress right now? But it's a sort of how to say? It's a sort of balance between attacks and the measures to change and contain this kind of attack. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, John, you were speaking.
Yeah, I was just saying, would anyone like to take that? Nir, would you like to respond?
I'd be happy to answer. First of all, the Log4j is a general vulnerability. We're not talking about an attack yet. We're talking about a vulnerability that probably will come later on with several types of attacks. We, at the moment that this vulnerability was released, we updated our system to detect every system that might use Log4j. I can tell you that I do not know about what attacks are going to be, because again, it's not a maritime thing. It's going to be something global. Every attack that will be globally probably will hit also today, also the maritime industry. In terms of what should or how vulnerable the system in the maritime industry, from our experience, they are very vulnerable. Log4j and other libraries are in a very wide use in the system that are implemented in the maritime industry in general, not only on vessels. And we already saw in the past, Alon mentioned it, but we already saw a lot of very similar vulnerabilities that in general can be fixed very easy. The Log4j is not something difficult to fix. But again, we need the market to understand that they have a problem. And if they're going, by the way, every company that has some yearly review, and they're going to do the review next year and understand that they have a problem, they already have a problem. I mean, cybersecurity is not for to do a once in a year a gap analysis. This is not going to solve the problem. you need something live, you need something to check every single day what new threats arrive, what vulnerabilities should be fixed. A lot of the vulnerabilities, if you do it and on a daily basis, like Log4j, it's very easy to fix. When you have it, a gap analysis once a year, it's a different thing, and you already had several attacks that tried, even if you don't know about it, they try to enter into the system you already paid, because in the end, the VSAT, you are paying for the attack. You're paying for the amount of data that this attack used, even if it's unsuccessful. So this is something that most of the companies don't understand, that they need something that will be all the time monitoring and understanding what the system looks like and what should be done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Great knowledge sharing, very interesting presentation indeed. Maybe it could be an important step in an extensive cybersecurity reporting of 2021, maybe in the near future. What is your opinion here?
Yeah, I'm as always, I'm very happy to work together. I think that we have a lot of work to be done. We have already on the table several projects that in the end are part of the research. CIDOM believes that the team is a combination from cybersecurity and maritime experts, and we all very focused on research. We're not looking for an off-the-shelf solution. We understand that this is a long run, and the problem is not, again, it's not only a vessel, it's not only a device. We need a very wide solution, and this is why we are working with the CMU, with the Class NK, with other organizations, to be able to have a strong research, to understand what is happening. And we need all the players we can in this kind of project.
As a moderator, I'm not supposed to comment, I don't think, but that approach is outstanding. Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we need. That's the way we're going to solve the problems of the future. Whether we like it commercially or not, whether we're bedtime or not, the reality is that no individual organization is ever going to be able to resolve this.
Totally agree.
The questions from the floor. Okay, then I think that session, I'll hand back to you, Gabrielle. I think that's now, I believe it's the closing remarks. Would that be appropriate?
Yes, thank you. Christina, I see you on the table. Can you address one last question, because you make some efforts to reconnect
Sorry, I didn't see that.
on the final computer, please?
Hello, Christina.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Hello. I'm very glad to be here and to speak with you. It's an extraordinary event. I'm very glad our colleague Mr. Raicu and his colleagues were able to organize this side event. It's really amazing. Great. So my question was about whether would you believe that we can push forward, whether we should push forward the conventions that already are existing and are already ratified by the International Maritime Organization, in order to have a legal background to include in the curriculum of all maritime universities these courses that already are happening in Constanta Maritime University, but not in all maritime universities across the globe. So courses that will teach our seafaring students how to behave in this algorithmic context, algorithmic age. And why I'm asking you this, whether is needed this type of change or not, well, I'm asking you because I'm doing a research, which is a grant by the International Association of Maritime Universities, and there are many universities there. And I believe after I end my research, there will be some results beside the usual deliverables. I think the result can be used further for amendments, for STCW conventions, because this organization already is there, is an advisory body for IMO, and is collecting from us all the suggestions that we can bring. So this is why I'm asking you. So the question, to rephrase again the question, do you think it's necessary to amend, to update the STCW? This would be the convention that organize our teaching curriculum for all the maritime universities, and to include in our curriculum skills needed for the cyber threats and everything that is connected to the cybersecurity level. Thank you.
I'm just going to say yes.
Yes,
I
indeed.
agree. Yeah, there's no, I don't think that there's I think this should be part of it. I think it's much more complex than just saying that they did some education about cybersecurity, because we all know there are a lot of ways that you can enter to a course, do some answer a few questions, and you are certified, cybersecurity certified. I think that if this is going forward, it should be something that will help us all to have a proper cybersecurity education, and not just a very basic one. Yeah. But the answer is yes.
Well, this is the easy answer, but the more complex answer necessary would be what skills exactly are needed for our students in order to face up these types of threats. Because, you know, we have students that will be in the managerial positions, other will be not in managerial positions, but they will be there like executive body on board vessel.
Yeah,
Some of them will be mechanics, some of them will be on deck navigation.
I'd like to respond to that, if I may, saying that I've been working with Gabrielle in the past, and we have cybersecurity training specifically for managers, as well as those who have specific skill sets. And in principle, that the differences are couched on language and understanding and roles and responsibilities. So we have developed some work in this area, and we'll continue to do so, because I believe, like you, the cybersecurity for managers is a gap. I think many people who are managers are frightened of cybersecurity, and I think if we could develop a plugin that sat in any particular course and said, okay, now you're doing an MBA, or now you're doing this. This is some of the key components of cybersecurity. I think that would be very valuable.
I would add something, a practical case that happened to me recently, really recently. So I have a student who is a master degree student, and I have to coordinate his master thesis, no matter the subject, anyway. And he is now on board the vessel. And I've prepared for him a structure for his thesis, and I've asked him, what do you think you can bring from the ship, like knowledge and practical case study? Because in our thesis, we need to include some case study. Mm-hmm. And without asking me any further, my student just gave me his password and username for that ship and for that system, for that company. And I've told him, no, it's wrong, delete that. It was a WhatsApp conversation. Don't do that again. Anyway,
user awareness will always.
He gave you the case. You are the case.
But
this is always a challenge, right?
Yes, but what if he does that with others? You know, so I was the.
But I think this widens the debate into something I call cyber hygiene, which is some of the basic principles that we all need. And I believe that if we brought that in, even at primary school, or on induction programs from employees right at the very beginning, and we get health and safety, we get this is what you do if there's a fire, but our cybersecurity training is please keep clicking this mouse until the acceptable use policy goes off the screen, and we can then actually do some work on the computer. So I think there's a kind of wider perspective around cyber hygiene that would mitigate many of those sorts of things. And I also believe it's generational. I think we're moving towards a society that is starting to become more cyber aware. And as they come forward into the industry, they will hopefully have a bit better understanding of the risks that are involved in that. But that's not to say that there won't be new risks that develop to replace them. And don't forget, the most sophisticated and effective attack on Earth is, what's your password?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Gabriel?
Yes, indeed, very interesting question. Until the end of our conference, which is a sort of proof about conference interest. Yeah.
By the way, I think there is another question I see from Marianne, but it's up to you whether we have enough time to answer. I see something on the chat, but it's
Okay.
Yeah, whether we have a time, yes or no.
I didn't hear that, Gabriel. I've got time. Have you got time?
Okay, I will try to make an finish for our conference today. I would like to thank you, all the participants, for the information and content provided. There was so much knowledge about general and maritime cybersecurity. I'm deeply convinced that the world can be better and more secure if our combined efforts lead to better collaboration. We intend to release soon a report about cybersecurity status in maritime education and training area. The report will be a synthesis of our university and our partners' considerations in maritime cybersecurity. But at the end of the year, I think we can reaffirm our determination to contribute by all means to increasing the level of protection in the field of cybersecurity. Let me wish you a happy new year and even more successes, health, and improved cyber safety in the next year. Tal, if you have some considerations, please feel free to add.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, all the distinguished speakers. I think it was a very important event in which both speakers presented the importance of cybersecurity and its implications of wide range of topics here in the maritime sector. The need not only to improve the IT and OT from the technological point of view, but raise the awareness, and it was well described by both lectures, to raise the awareness for the need to improve the technology, IT and OT, and the raise of awareness to improve the knowledge of the human capital, the end users. So, as you said, Gabriel, at this platform at the end of the year 2021, let's hope that the new year will bring, well, perhaps less challenges and threats and much more knowledge, awareness, empowerment. Not only empowerment of the technology, but basically empowerment of the end users that are behind every such IT and OT technology. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, John, the moderator. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Dan. Of course, Gabriel. And let's meet in next year in our next event.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to add that COVID has caused a devastating effect on the world, but it's also introduced remote working, which is something we've been trying to implement for the last 20 years. And so our world has changed because of it, and our cybersecurity perspective has changed. And I think that 2022 will be a very interesting year.
Yeah. Thank you all, and Happy New Year and safe New Year.
Happy New Year.
Definitely. Thank you.
Happy New Year.